Welcome to Stats and Scheme. I am Shawn Syed, joined as always by my good friend Tej Seth. It is officially draft week, and we will officially be at the draft. Tej and I will both be there. Sam Brookhouse and Ben Brown will be there from the media room in Detroit. Eric Eager and Thomas Dimitrov, of course, will be doing our live show for the first round on Thursday, and we'll have tons of content for you through the weekend. Tej, are you excited? I don't know, would you like to promote Detroit style pizza before Ben, Sam, and I get there?
I am really excited to hang out with you, Ben, Sam. I think it's going to be a really fun time. I thought about gatekeeping my favorite Detroit pizza place, but I figured anyone coming to Detroit should deserve the authentic experience. So if you are in town for the draft, check out Buddy's Pizza. I used to do this bit at college where I told people that were from New York, like, oh, I'm like, oh yeah, Buddy's Pizza, best pizza in America. And it would kind of get them riled up. But I actually do think it's really good pizza. Obviously I have a little bit of bias growing up on it, but it's awesome. Like I think anyone in town will really enjoy that. Going to
Tej,
Buddies.
I love that. I know you were tons of fun in college. Uh, a long time ago for you, of course. So I grew up in North Jersey, as you know, and like was in a town that had like four really good pizza places. But I'm partial to Chicago style pizza, but I just love pizza. I'm glad we can get that take out of the way early. And also, I think something I've grown to love is the NFL draft. Today's show, we're going to talk about 11 questions that will really shape the first round, and I think a lot of the 2024 NFL draft. I'm going to steal a thing that our good friend Sheil Kapadia does, his style, where I have the numbers 1 to 11 written down that will decide which questions we go with. But you're going to pick. So, Tej, your first number. I have it written down. Hopefully I can keep track of it all. I'll have to scroll kind of quick, but give me a number 1 to 11. What are we going to talk about first?
Yeah, I'm using a random number generator here, so let's go with 3. That's what popped up.
Paige, that is hilarious that you use a random number generator. I'm really glad that you didn't want to introduce any kind of bias in any sort of way. All right, you said number 3, right?
Number 3, yeah.
Okay, so we feel comfortable that the Bears will go Caleb Williams at number 1. We assume the Commanders are going to go quarterback at number 2, which I guess it would be Drake May, but happy to be wrong there. So at 3, we have the New England Patriots. New head coach, new regime. They need a lot of players. They don't have the strongest offensive environment for a quarterback to go into. So I think the question that should be posed is, should the Patriots take a quarterback at number 3 overall, given their current offensive environment?
I think this is actually a really interesting philosophical question when it comes to the Patriots and whether they should take a quarterback at number 3 overall. I won't really fault them for whatever they end up deciding, but I think when you look at the Patriots this year and how they have the third least amount of wins, they have the third highest chance of getting the number 1 pick. You can kind of think about what next year's draft class is going to look like. And it is going to be a little bit weaker than this year. I think Carson Beck, Shador Sanders, those types of guys are pretty good quarterbacks, but they're probably not the caliber of the quarterback you're getting at number 3 overall this year. But you are getting the extra picks if you decide to trade down from this number 3 spot. So I think for New England, I lean slightly towards trading back just because if you do take a rookie quarterback, they are not going to be throwing to much pass catching talent. Even though you have Jacoby Brissett there to start a couple games, we know that teams usually get pretty antsy about wanting to put their rookie quarterback in. And I just don't know if you want that rookie quarterback to develop bad habits pretty early in their career just because the supporting cast isn't there yet.
All right. So in this situation, so I'm trying to take it from the highest level first. You know how much I like Kevin Stefanski's offenses. So the Patriots get Alex Van Pelt coming in, who was most recently with Stefanski in Cleveland. Of course, most recently last year in Arizona, we saw Drew Petzing put together a really nice structure, even with their top quarterback out. So maybe I'm like underrating the environment just a little bit. The next year quarterback class stuff, I just try not to dig too much into. At the same time, like last year, we could see even whatever Caleb Williams was going to do, it was kind of known like, hey, there is like a person that we're looking directly at. So maybe for next year, we say, hey, there's not an Andrew Luck or just like a bona fide, like we know already this is going to be the top prospect there. But Tish, I mean, don't make me dig into the next draft class yet. We're not going to do that. And I know, look, we can point to the Lions as a team who they bottomed out for a long-term positive. And I don't know, maybe the AFC East is just not as good as we think it is, and the Patriots sneak in some wins. So it's just a hard one, because to me, if May is there at 3, that's just really hard to pass up, because you don't know when the next chance you're going to have at a quarterback in that spot is. Like, if the Patriots get the 5th pick next year, and then they have to mortgage like 2 years of picks just to move up a few spots. So I worry a lot about the situation here, I think. And like you said, the developing bad habits, but also, like, if your team's not ready for that, it's unfortunate. And then, I mean, Eric Eager wrote a good article about should you sit rookie quarterbacks. And I feel like, a lot of times, like, if your rookie quarterback is good enough, he's going to raise up the situation. And I feel like this is something where I just like ping pong back and forth in my head. And I think it's going to depend on which quarterback it is that falls at 3. Again, like I said, I think if it's May at 3, it would be pretty hard for me to pass up there in that situation. I guess, like, there's also a difference between, is it like a healthy thing to do for the quarterback? I don't think, like, it's ever healthy for a quarterback to go into a lot of these situations. A lot of time you're asking, like, okay, well, is the quarterback good enough to kind of outdo what the situation is? And in my head, I'm just thinking, like, okay, well, let's just get the best quarterback to Minnesota, or whatever quarterback lands in Minnesota is going to end up having the best kind of situation. So that may just have the best career because of that. So I feel like I'm punting this, but I'm gonna say take a quarterback if it's May at 3, because you are betting that, hey, like, this quarterback is good enough to outplay the situation and lift you up in such a way that it kind of, like, hopefully is able to take care of itself. At the same time, there is really a band of outcomes for May, particularly, where, like, he has times where he is inaccurate and misses throws that you've seen him make over and over. So, like, does that become a problem, or does what people perceive as his, like, footwork inconsistency, or for me, it feels like more on tape, hey, you're on an offense where it is not as exact as a Shanahan offense in terms of footwork, or maybe it is, but it's like done in a different way where he gets to be a little bit more of a freestyler in that way. So, Tish, I don't even know if I gave an answer there, but how are we feeling there?
I know, I really like a lot of the points you brought up. I think you can talk yourself both into May and Daniels as future NFL quarterbacks. Like, I think there's justifiable reasons for either of them. It really comes down to, as an organization, as a coaching staff, do you think you can fix May's accuracy, like you mentioned, or do you think you can fix Jaden Daniels's sack rate and how often he takes sacks when pressured? And I don't know if there's a great answer to that. I still think that we don't have enough college quarterback data to really show, which of those is easier to fix. I think that sack rate is obviously something that's more stable, but I think over time we'll get a better answer to what actually is malleable once you're in the league. And so when I look at Drake May and some of the pass catching options that he has available to him, can these guys bail him out if he has those bouts of inaccuracy that we saw from him his last year at North Carolina? And I just don't know if that is going to be something that happens. Maybe you have everything else go really well for May. His size translates to the NFL, his arm talent, his sack avoidance, like all of those things translates. And then you work up to build his accuracy, next year and the year after that, with really investing a lot of resources into pass catchers. Like, I think that is something that is very viable for the Patriots to pull off. I just look at it from a standpoint where if they are trading for multiple future picks, we know that NFL teams undervalue future picks more than they should for a combination of 2 reasons. One, it's usually GMs that are trading to save their jobs in a more refined timeline, or 2, they often over project how they're going to perform next year. And you can use something like a Vegas win total to kind of see where that range of that pick will end up. So, like, the Patriots are able to get multiple first round picks out of this. They pick up even multiple first round picks in this year's draft. You can start to work towards a supporting cast where maybe you can drop in a quarterback eventually, but obviously you might not be in the situation again where you have a top 3 pick and there's a pretty good quarterback prospect available at number 3.
Yeah, the trade haul is always a big thing. It's like, well, what is it going to look like? If it's something that just blows you out of the water, you kind of have to take it, right? Or is it, they just love Marvin Harrison Jr. more than anything, and they want that, what feels like, obviously no prospect is safe, but what feels like a pretty safe pick at that spot. And Tish, I just have so many conflicting thoughts in my head, like, about these things, because, like, you draft a quarterback, and to me, I think we've gotten a little bit past the, hey, you need to sit a quarterback for multiple years, like, get that player out there and have them develop. But then at the same time, there is, like, a real fear, I think, that I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to shake, that, like, yeah, scar tissue can happen. And, if you see certain things in your first year, But then there's also, well, if a player is really struggling in their first year, maybe there's a lot of just signal there where, their ceiling is maybe not going to be able to be as accessible. And like I've said previously, like if I'm going to get fired for a pick, I want to get fired for betting on Drake May. Tage, that was number 3. You want to go ahead and click that random number generator? Let's see what we got next.
All right, it popped up number 6.
Okay, number 6 from our non-bias from Tage. All right, so the New York Jets are at pick 10 in round 1. They've been mocked. Brock Bowers a bunch. They could certainly use offensive line help and really like health overall as some help there. And they're seemingly like as all in can be. I think last year we're like, okay, well, they have a 2-year window. Well, we're on year 2 of that window. So what position would help the Jets in their process of going all in the most?
So it goes back to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, but I do not think it's tight end actually at number 10. I think both wide receiver and offensive tackle would be better choices for the Jets in this 1 to 2 year window. Nothing against Brock Bowers, like obviously one of the better tight end prospects to come out in recent history, but we talked about tight ends have both a harder time to project from college to pro and also a slower development curve from college to pro, because they really have to learn 2 positions on while they're playing in the pros, both wide receiver and offensive lineman, and combining those together, I think is a pretty difficult process for them. So if there is a situation where the Jets can trade back and take a receiver like a Brian Thomas Jr., I think that would put them in a really good spot. If Roma Dunze is somehow available to them at number 10, or they have to go 1 or 2 spots to get him, I think that would also be pretty interesting as well. And then there's so many offensive tackles that they can take in the first 20 picks. So again, trade back or stay at 10. Like both of their tackles are playable and should perform pretty decently when on the field, but the injury risk is there for the 2 of them. So if they go one of those 2 directions at number 10, I feel like they should be in a pretty good spot with their offensive supporting cast.
Yeah, I think a wide receiver trade up would be so inspired and just great for, like, that would be something that I would have a hard time like saying anything negative about on our kind of reactions to that, because yeah, like that would be super fun. I personally, I think I would lean tackle, just thinking about like, well, what could really just like fold their season, and if they have issues at tackle, if Smith goes down, like that is going to be just a really long problem. I think that receiver isn't something that crossed my mind as much until recently, because they have Garrett Wilson. Of course, they bring in Mike Williams, whatever his health status is. You have, I think it's like Lazard is their 3rd. We love Breece Hall. Throw in a rookie receiver, and I guess Tage, we're like living the Penei Sewell kind of Jamar Chase meme of like what are we gonna do kind of in that situation. I do like the idea of receiver. I guess like a lot of these, it depends. Like, how does the board fall? Is it like does a Dunze find himself to 10? Whether it's the Bears need to take an edge, or you just get like 15 quarterbacks getting taken in the first however many picks, and that kind of leads to it. But I mean, a Dunze in that offense would be kind of fun. Tage, why don't you press that random number generator? Let's get another one going.
All right, let's go with number 10 here.
Number 10, Tage. I think my scroll fingers are a little slow. All right, so while technically not in the first round, we do need to talk about the Carolina Panthers, who sit at 33 and 39. So that first pick in the second round, it's often a spot that, I mean, maybe I'm just like weighting more recent ones more heavily, but it feels like that's a spot where people want to trade up to, whether it's just like you're sitting there the entire Friday and like, oh, well, we need this player. Like they're probably climbing up kind of everyone's board. So maybe that's a spot where the Panthers in their first year with Dave Canales, they just get a sweet offer and kind of get out of there. But Dave Canales may end up being defined by what he is able to do with Bryce Young after having success, of course, with Smith as a quarterback coach, and then Baker Mayfield last year in Tampa Bay. So at 33 and 39, do the Panthers double up at receiver?
I've thought about this a lot. I think that there's a fair chance that the Panthers end up trading up back into the first round. I don't think we'll see Dan Morgan and Dave Canales go full Les Snead and Sean McVay, where they do a press conference during the Thursday of the draft like they usually do. But like, I think when you look at it, they might want to even jump just the Chiefs to get into the first round. But they might also have a receiver they really want to get that they don't know if it's going to make it to 33. So receiver will definitely be one of these 2 picks if they end up staying. I think that it should be both. I understand that their edge rushing group is pretty uninspiring, but I think that this offseason has been and should be all about putting Bryce Young into a situation where there's a path to succeed. And I really think the defense can be figured out later. So whether it's wide receiver at 33, 39, you trade up and get the receiver, like I just mentioned, or you even take a receiver at 33 and then trade back and pick up a tight end, preferably a pretty athletic one, like a Ben Sinnott, like a Jaheim Bell, like just kind of keep putting these pieces around Bryce Young so that you can see how he can succeed under Dave Canales and the Panthers supporting cast.
Yeah, I really feel like this whole past year, like we think of Stroud and Love and how well that they did in their really first years playing for Jordan Love. Like I'm so now much more obsessed with the idea of whatever you do, like you have to throw so many resources at that spot. Obviously, we see Stephon Diggs go to Buffalo and Josh Allen is able to take off and find so much success there. Like you have to throw all those resources at your quarterback, and you just have to find out. Like if the quarterback is not the quarterback of the future, to me, I guess it's again, all these things are so easy for me to say from the outside, but I think it's better to know that earlier. So you get all those resources, and look, if that quarterback isn't it, and if that quarterback is on their rookie deal still, and you're able to get off that, like you're able to bring someone in, and you already have kind of a positive environment. For Carolina, like I just want them to get separators. I like the move for Deontay Johnson for that specific reason. I hope like the Panthers, whatever, they filter their college prospects by separation as like a tiebreaker. So you got players that, maybe they're able to give Bryce Young a little bit more leeway. And like the Bears may be defined for the next 10 years by the Caleb pick, the same way that the Colts may be defined for 10 years by the Anthony Richardson pick. The Panthers may be defined by 10 years by whatever happens for Bryce Young, kind of positive or negative. And like you mentioned, maybe you want to jump to 31, kind of trade with the 49ers. They seem like a team that would be, maybe they would be willing to trade back. Maybe we'll talk about Brandon Aiyuk later. We'll see what the random number generator says. But if the Bills and Chiefs both want to go receiver, like where does Carolina need to move up to? How much are they willing to kind of do there? I do like from just like a team building structure. I know the Panthers have Brant Hillis there, who is with Kansas City previously, and like I think he's someone who's going to be a future GM. So maybe it just leads to positive conversations in the building about team building. All right, Tage, we're 3 questions through. What do we got next?
Let's go up to number 2.
Number 2, scrolling. All right. So the Seattle Seahawks enter this draft with a new head coach in Mike Macdonald. And I think he has like the chance to, and he has been in the media a little bit, particularly after his interviews, like to be framed as like, this is the Sean McVay of defense, where it's a young coach put in a big spot after showing a lot of innovation as a coordinator with a great coaching background, and just eyes are on him. So in this draft, where the Seahawks, not that they're necessarily set on offense, but it feels like the most likely draft pick in the first round is going to be on the defensive side, and particularly on a bit of a weaker defensive interior. I personally would love if Lottie from UCLA lands in Seattle at 16. They should benefit from so many teams wanting to go offense in the top 10. I've seen great defensive tackles mocked to them. So the question is, should the Seahawks go with an edge rusher or a defensive tackle in round 1?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good question. I love the description of Mike Macdonald as the Sean McVay of defense. He was someone who won our Stats and Scheme Defensive Play Caller of the Year award a couple months ago. So it's good to talk about him here. I lean defensive tackle, and I really do want to hear your thoughts on this. Because I think you might have some really good insight. But the reason why I say defensive tackle is I think he does such a good job of getting the most out of edge rushers from both the development and a scheme standpoint. In 2020, Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo barely played for Michigan. They had 0 sacks the entire year. Mike Macdonald comes in, they get 25 sacks combined in 2021. I think that when you look at last year and the Ravens roster, like they bring in Jadeveon Clowney, sometime during the summer, he goes off and he has probably the best sack per dollar value in the entire NFL. I think that when you look at who might be available to him at 16 overall, Byron Murphy could be his Justin Madubuike, where he's that level of a prospect where I think he can have a pretty big impact and kind of really be that force on the interior for Mike Macdonald. And I think it really comes down to, would you rather have the best defensive tackle in this draft, or the one that you feel most confident about, or would you take the second, third, fourth best edge, whoever's really available to you at that spot. Maybe he's not a clear blue chip player, but maybe a tier below, but you might feel more confident in your projection from that point.
This is this is an interesting one. I get, so it's really reductive, but if we think about just two different styles of like defensive front, so you have your kind of Browns, 49ers, Jets, where it's just four rushers. Usually at least one of them is like a star like Garrett and Bosa, and they're just kind of attacking you up the field. And now everyone doesn't have that type of rusher, or teams like to play from those kind of 3 or 4 odd fronts. So you can have like a little bit more of what we'll call like a team rush mentality, where it's like, you know, you have your Sims and creepers, where sometimes you're just sending 4, but the 4th is a linebacker or the nickel. You drop out a defensive end. And so from a philosophical standpoint, it feels like McDonald likes the latter, but I think it's to be seen. It like, is that out of necessity? Is that because he really feels it? I think it's probably because he really feels it. But like, if you have the former, you as in like a dominant number one edge rusher, like you usually take advantage of that. But like, how many units are going to be like San Francisco, like Cleveland, like New York? Not that many. So it feels like, in a way, McDonald's superpower has, well, I mean, so much on the coverage aspect too, but looking away from that just to the front, like being able to create pressure with not subpar rushers. All those guys are good, and a lot of those guys are going to end up getting paid. But when you're able to get more out of what feels like a little bit less, not having that star edge rusher, or kind of like manufacturing the star edge rusher, but in Seattle, so they have Williams on the interior. I kind of like the idea of adding strength to strength. In my head, like, again, I like, if it's Latu, like I would like him at defensive end. Obviously, you know, whatever the medicals come up, that is a really, really big deal. Yeah. We obviously saw Leighton Vander Esch just retire after, I think it was 5 years. So I don't know how much you look into that specifically. Obviously, two different human beings, so they're going to have different like histories of different injuries and of that nature. Tej, it feels like you got a bit of a draft crush on Byron Murphy. Can I say that's true?
It is, because when we were building our draft cards for the draft show that we're having on Thursday, he was just like the randomly picked person that we use as a template. Ashley Prue and I were building a lot of these cards. So I saw so much Byron Murphy for the past week that he's just kind of seared into my brain now. So I feel like I really like him because of that.
All right. So, okay. So like, going back to a little bit more directly to your question. So we get like in the abstract, defensive tackle 1 or kind of edge 2 or 3. I guess it's like, what are you building your pass rush plan around is a big deal to me. And so for me, if you feel like, hey, we can get, you know, interior pass rush from Williams on the inside, like, then, you know, maybe we lean towards the edge because it feels like you already have a DT1. But I don't know, like, you throw strength on strength, let's get 2 good defensive tackles. I think I'm gonna give an answer and say, let's, like, even the, obviously it's dependent on, well, how different is this player? Because, wow, Tej, now you're thinking, well, what if Byron Murphy is my draft crush? And like, if your grade on that player is higher, like, I think teams probably too much think, hey, we need to fill this like super specific need with the draft, as opposed to just like, look, this player is really, really good. We're not pretending like defensive tackle is a position like kicker where you probably shouldn't draft that position. So I'd be comfortable if they took, like, if they had Byron Murphy so much ahead on their board, then, for example, if it is the second or third edge, I'm comfortable and confident in that pick. In the abstract, I'd like that edge, just so I think it gives you a little bit more versatility. Like, you usually don't see defensive tackles bumped out, but you, obviously, unless you have Chris Jones, but you can see edges get bumped in.
Yeah.
So I think it'll come down a little bit to the skill there, but maybe we'll make a little Detroit pizza bet on who ends up in Seattle. Hey, who knows? Maybe they trade out. Maybe we get something crazy, and then it feels like, why did we even ask the random number generator to give any numbers? Anything else on that, Tej?
No, I think you summed that up really well. So let's go to number 4 now.
Number 4. Tej, was that the random number generator? Or are you just doing it so you don't have to scroll too much on the card?
Yeah, I mean, it wants us to stay K nearest neighbors here in the general vicinity.
There you go. All right, okay. So, question for you: start the Jim Harbaugh era with the 5th pick in the draft. Harbaugh has made it very clear that he loves building through the trenches. And did you see his Michigan tattoo? Are you going to get a matching one or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could get both shoulder tattoos. You know, as long as my parents and my grandma don't find out, I think I should be good there.
Oh, Tej. All right, yeah, okay. So along with Harbaugh making it clear that he loves offensive line, I mean, like, the film does too, right? And obviously, both of us watching the Michigan games last year, you can feel that in a lot of ways. And So the Chargers could use that number one on a receiver. I would love if they did that. We'll talk about that a little bit more, so we don't have to defend or spend too much time defending Justin Herbert based on the receiver. So at pick 5, or even if they trade back, hey, should the Chargers go offensive line or receiver?
So I think most people would say receiver here. You can ask our friend Arjun Menon, who you might have seen on TV, and like he's put together some really good work on the Chargers wide receiver room. Currently has the least amount of receiving yards total in the entire league. I think when I was doing some early fantasy projections pre-draft today, like Josh Palmer is currently slated to have a top 5 target share in the entire NFL right now, just because of default, basically. Like I think the Chargers' need for receiver is evident, probably a little bit more than their offensive line. But if I were to like just play devil's advocate on that, I can see the vision for taking a tackle here. It would be hard to kick someone over from left tackle to right tackle, whether that's Rashawn Slater or let's say they take Joe Alt at number 5. But when I look at Ben Baldwin's projections for offensive line, the Chargers currently have the 9th best pass blocking offensive line in his projections. They have a 95th percentile left tackle, a 99th percentile center, and then their right side of their offensive line, they have a 68th percentile right guard and a 61st percentile right tackle. So if they take Joe Alt there and he lives up to his draft capital, let's say becomes 80th percentile, you kind of shift your guards around where you kick Trey Pipkins inside. You have him kind of move around. Like you could not have a single weak link on your offensive line, and you could get something similar to what the Lions offensive line has been lately, what the Eagles offensive line has been lately. Like I do see kind of the vision for taking that. But again, it just goes back to like, there is such a big need at every single wide receiver slot here. So I would still go wide receiver if I was the Chargers. I can just see a situation where they want to get that premier tackle in the first round. And because of positional scarcity, they feel like they can get wide receivers plural on day 2.
Yeah, shout out to Arjun, obviously, to start. I had a nice little profile done on him. I checked that out on Twitter. When you sent me the receiver shares, I think it was yesterday or the day before that, it felt like a jump scare. Like, who are these people that are coming up too high? I do think it's important to note, like, the offensive line, it's not like the worst offensive line that's ever been constructed. I think maybe just a little bit better than people think are giving credit to. It does feel like the public has moved pretty clearly to the receivers, partially because of good work from Arjun, where it's like, guys, like this is like red alert, like siren. We need to have this discussion. And I think you actually mentioned it to me previously, like the idea of alt switching sides. That's just like not something that I love. Like maybe they trade back and go with someone who they feel like this is more of a right tackle kind of person. I do like the point actually that their general manager made, that I think it was their GM, that like, hey, we're not looking for a fair trade, because no one should ever be looking for a fair trade. Like, Tage, when you call me up trying to collude in our like EA Sports college football 25 dynasty, trying like for some NIL portal players, like I'm not looking for you to be fairly compensated. I want to be unfairly compensated in the positive direction. So I like that attitude. But like, I'm never going to have a problem with people saying, oh, we want to build through the offensive line, because we can't praise Howie Roseman so much for saying, how he builds through the trenches. He does this, he does that. And then look somewhere else and being like, well, why is the team trying to do this? I think in this specific situation, though, I guess this is kind of tough because it's a deep offensive line class. You can say it's a deep receiver class. I think I'm biased in this situation because like, I just don't want to see Justin Herbert throw these just nonsensical passes that literally are defying physics in so many ways and just kind of like hitting off a receiver's hands. It would make me pretty frustrated for us to go through that. Then we'd have to like name it the Stats and Scheme Justin Herbert Award for a player who we're standing up for, where it felt like going into this year, I can tell you now it's going to be Trevor Lawrence, where like last year, how many times is the ball going to go to a receiver and their toes go out of the end zone? And the year before that, it was Dak, where it was why do Dak's receivers keep having the ball hit off them and end up as interception? So please don't be Justin Herbert this year. I'm concerned for that. So I lean receiver there. We'll see. We'll see what happens. You can get both of those positions right in this draft, where it's offensive tackle or a lot of good offensive linemen, a lot of good receivers. You get both. Maybe you say, hey, Herbert can get the most out of this. And again, if I'm going to advocate and say, well, maybe teams should just, draft the best players. Obviously, that's very easy to say, but maybe we're a little bit less about, hey, we need to fill like this specific role on our team right now. It feels like Harbaugh's going to take a long-term approach. And with that in mind, they need a lot of help on defense. Maybe that's a situation where you trade back a little bit, whether it's, I don't know, maybe a team like Tennessee really wants Joe Alt, or if someone else is trying to get that player. All right, Chase, what else, or what's the next number you're thinking about?
All right, we're going down to number 8 here.
Number 8. Okay, speaking of Howie Roseman, our good friend, Howie Roseman, the Eagles, they're always a fun team to monitor in the draft. And this, just like as an Eagles season, is incredibly fascinating, which may be like lazy adjective usage, but like I think that it is proper in the situation. So we get the reports that Belichick is interested in like every team in the NFC East, including the Eagles. You got speculation around the head coach. They bring in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. The offense is extremely well compensated at every single position. Their defense has some fairly clear holes in it. And at the same time, Howie Roseman kind of understands that you just don't play. And really, I feel like I'm getting it from him saying the quote, so I'm not going to pretend like I made it up. But his understanding that you don't just plug holes on your roster. You're building for like that year, because, rookies aren't just gonna come on the scene and like win every single like yard total and things like that, but you're building for the long term through the draft. He does a great job in free agency, I think, of making sure that, hey, they don't need to reach crazy far in the draft to fill those holes. So kind of given all that, in round 1, what position do you think the Eagles should be targeting?
So I think, like you mentioned, like there are holes on defense. Cornerback is probably their biggest need, but I really think Howie Roseman subscribes to the philosophy that you can take trenches on day 1, because that's usually where we see the really good ones come from. And you look at his draft capital spent, and that backs it up. And then you can take multiple dart throws on day 2 and day 3 at defensive back and really just build up, pretty good back 7 in the aggregate. And so you look at the Eagles draft capital. They have 22, 50, 53, and then they have a big gap between 53 and 120. I was telling my friend Sarah Grossman this, who's probably one of the biggest Eagles fans I know. Like, I feel like this is a spot where Howie Roseman could do a trade back and then trade back up, so he could pick up another later day 2 pick, maybe a round 3 pick throughout that whole process in the aggregate. And so I think that they should and probably will look at both defensive line and wide receiver in round 1. And then after that, I think, they'll start to look at cornerback later, because you can just, again, like I mentioned, like you can just really take multiple shots at that position and kind of build up a non-weak link system or non-weak link defensive back room.
There's receiver in round 1 there. So obviously you got Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. What are your feelings and thoughts, kind of receiver in round 1 for the Eagles?
I would just like to see kind of how teams defend the Eagles offense. If they have a little bit more juice to them, like I think a problem that the Eagles ran into last year was when they faced a lot of man coverage, they were pretty much telegraphing they were going to go to AJ Brown. There's a lot of screens used last year. Like the offense felt like it stalled at times. And I think Brian Johnson did have his struggles. I know Kellen Moore is coming in now, but like when you add a receiver, like if it's a Xavier Worthy or someone who can really add a speed element to the offense from the slot, like I think you really start to get pretty interesting with what you can do from Hurts throwing to AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, another receiver, Dallas Goedert, also the run game between Hurts and Saquon Barkley and what they can do from that perspective. And like, it would just be really fun to see another receiver there. And I think that would be a decent spot to take one.
There we go. I mean, look, I'm just pushing for fun here. That's what we want. Yeah, them having the 2 picks in the second round pretty close together. That's that's ammo if you want to move up just a few spots. And I don't know, based on nothing, it feels like a year where maybe they move up. Like again, they move up just a few spots, whether it's however the kind of tiers are breaking on their board or whatever's happening in those kind of first like 15, 16 picks. And gosh, the cornerback position for them is a long-term problem. Like whenever Slay is gonna like not like, hey, Slay is gonna fall off a cliff, but he's at a different phase in his career. Bradbury had struggles last year at different points. At the same time, like I said, Roseman wants to build for the long term. Do they plug or draft a tackle knowing that maybe Lane Johnson, maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 2 years, however long Lane Johnson wants to play, he should be able to play because he's still one of the top right tackles in the league. So is it like a player like Amarius Mims where, maybe a player that hasn't had as many snaps, but it's someone who you want to, or I think, didn't have as many snaps, but a player that with the raw tools that you can really kind of build. And they have the cheat code with Jeff Stoutland, who's like at the worst top 2 offensive line coaches in the league, where not a lot of teams, I think, can say, hey, we're just going to like take a shot on this lineman and trust that you're going to go to Stoutland University and really kind of be built up. I like the point that you made on, maybe you could take kind of multiple dart throws at the cornerback position. I feel like I could see them trading up at 16 and taking whether it's, Quinyon Mitchell, if that's their top cornerback, kind of getting one off the board. But, Roseman hasn't drafted a cornerback in the first round in like whatever, since like Lito Shepherd, like very, very long. So I'm not sure if that's like inherent to him, but it could just be like he understands how hard of translating that position from college to pro is. So this will be a fun one to talk about in the recap. I feel like whatever the Eagles do, it's going to be something we talk about because they're obviously close to both of our hearts. Tish, we don't have too many numbers left here. I'm counting them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers left. You're a little bit more than halfway through. What's our next number to talk about?
Yeah, I did have to click the random number generator a couple times because it repeated. So now I'm at down to 11 for the question.
And Tish, how do you like the structure where like we didn't have to spend any time on like, well, how do we make the questions flow into each other? We just do this fun thing that content extraordinaire Sheil Kapadia has done. We just get to take good ideas. I feel like you're pro taking good ideas from other people, right?
Yeah, I mean Sheil is one of the best too, so I'm glad that we can take a page from his book here.
First ballot, yeah, the Howie Roseman of podcasting, if I may say so.
Yeah,
myself. 2 Philly legends. Okay, so number 11, Tage, something that I don't like recently is that like as teams need more receivers on their roster, right? We get more 11 personnel, more teams using 3 receivers. We realize how valuable they are. A premium position, the cap goes up, but it's hard to build your roster when you have a receiver eating up such a massive percentage of the cap. So now we just see these star receivers. Feels yearly now, coming up kind of on the end of their contracts. Maybe some of them just in like a little bit disgruntled situations. And a trade or some move seems likely to the public when you don't have kind of an extension right there on the table. So this year we have T. Higgins and Brandon Aiyuk as our prime candidates for potential movement. So will we see a draft night trade or draft morning, if you want to say day 3, trade for either T. Higgins or Brandon Aiyuk?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is based off really no info, but just kind of what past trends can tell us about these situations and kind of what we might see in this draft. Like I think a T. Higgins trade on day 2 is more likely than a Brandon Aiyuk trade on day 1. I think that when you look at the 49ers, like it would be pretty tough to stomach trading Brandon Aiyuk on draft day. I know they've had some similar trades before, like, when they made a trade with the Colts, and I think that pick ended up becoming Brandon Aiyuk, where they traded DeForest Buckner away. But like, I think a player that plays this high of an important position, as well as like had such a good year last year, like he's probably going to end up extended with San Francisco. When I look at T. Higgins, though, I think that there are teams at the top of the second round that might be available, like that might be interested in trading for him if they don't walk out of day 1 with maybe a receiver that they wanted, or maybe they're looking to trade up and the price was too expensive. And I think the Bengals have telegraphed that he's more available than Aiyuk.
Tish, for Higgins, like if say it's the Panthers, like what would you offer? Like 33 and 39 feels like a lot for Higgins, but I mean, if one of those can get it done, I mean, that's a trade that I'd make, probably, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think just 39 overall would be pretty good for both sides. The Bengals are able to get cheaper at receiver like they want to, and the Panthers kind of nailed down a more of a set thing at receiver. Obviously a little bit more uncertainty when changing situations, but like kind of what T. Higgins is at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do need to remind everyone that like Brandon Aiyuk is an awesome receiver. Just a legit wide receiver 1, can win on any route. I want him on my team. I understand their cap implications. Teams don't just get to play Madden Ultimate Team like we do on the pod here. But like throw picks at it. Like if you're a team that can move up or can move quarterback money around or hasn't paid your quarterback yet, you can get an Aiyuk deal done before Jefferson and Lamb get theirs done. and blow up the entire market. I don't know why. For me, again, I love it when we say like based on nothing. Like, yeah, it's not inside information, but like a Higgins trade for me, I know it just doesn't feel as likely for whatever reason based on I don't know, maybe the Bengals can keep him content for a year. You get Burrow there back and hopefully healthy, and there has to be a real possibility that Aiyuk stays in San Francisco where he's awesome. But like if I'm Pittsburgh, if I'm New England, if I'm Jacksonville, and yeah, with Carolina too, like John Lynch should have to block your number for how much you're going to call him for Brandon Aiyuk. You don't want to start any rumors about a Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb draft day trade, Tish. You're not looking to get aggravated today.
Well, I kind of started the CeeDee Lamb one a couple weeks ago at the very end of an episode, so I'll just keep it at that for now. So I don't get picked up by ML football or something.
Yeah, there you go. I saw like 2 or 3 people, not like directly to that, but like yeah, I mean, situation in Dallas, we'll see. And Minnesota, this is not one of the questions, but if I'm in Minnesota, Tish, I have concerns that they're like if they're not going to get a draft day trade done. Maybe they don't want to. But yeah, I'm excited to talk to Ben Brown about that in Detroit. What's the next number you got for us, Tish?
All right, it does have us staying pretty close again. So we're up to number 9, which I think is probably one of the more interesting questions that we have here.
All right. Yeah. Number 9, the Los Angeles Rams. They finally have a first-round pick at 19 and recently lost future Hall of Famer Aaron Donald to retirement. So they've been mocked interior defensive line help. But there also talks to them wanting to go an offensive player. Obviously, you got Sean McVay at head coach there. And I think if I was an offensive mind head coach, I would certainly lean in that direction as well. So should the Rams go offense or defense in round 1?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I think this is actually going to be super fascinating to follow. We're also talking about it in a group chat, and I think my friend Diggs brought up a really good point where it's like, yeah, the Rams are kind of in a weird spot for taking receivers where you're going to have to take one of the tier 2 guys unless you make a trade. But I think that they still should consider spending pretty significant draft capital on a receiver, whether it's a trade up or a trade back, kind of depending on how the board falls. And I look at it for a couple of reasons. One, they run the most 11 personnel in the league. And their wide receiver 3 is currently Demarcus Robinson, who kind of came on towards the second half of last year, but still pretty iffy for how much 11 you're going to be in. The second reason is you're not going to really come close to replacing Aaron Donald as a singular player. As much as I like Byron Murphy, very small chance he ends up having an Aaron Donald career. So I think it'll have to be done over time and in the aggregate. Maybe edge is a bigger need for them than defensive tackle, but still, though, I still think you're so far away from defense, and that can kind of be figured out later. And the third is really like you have Matthew Stafford playing at still a pretty good level. Puka Nacua, had one of the better rookie receiver seasons of all time last year. Cooper Kupp is kind of up in the air of how well he's going to perform with age, but he's still a viable receiving option, and throwing a third receiver in there will probably make your pass offense at least top 10, maybe top 8, top 5 in the league. And we haven't really seen top 10 pass offenses miss the playoffs that often in the past couple of years. So maybe you do have a pretty bad defense. Maybe you become a kind of a version of the 2023 Lions last year, where you have a really good pass offense, but a not so good pass defense. And that kind of gets you in the playoffs and you hope for variance to go your way. Like, I think that's really the path that the Rams can go down, is to kind of be a version of that. If they end up taking a receiver in the first round or maybe even the second.
It feels like, every team you mentioned, like the Jets, you say, oh, maybe a receiver there. Like, just all 32 teams, just tell me that all of them are going to draft a receiver, and that will feel inspired to me. I love that. At 19, it feels like, is that a little early for some of the tier 2 guys? Maybe. And I do like that McVay is, he's special. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that to me. And we are able to get like Tutu Atwell performing, and like all like these players that are able to do like specific roles really, really well. So I like the idea of, if McVay is able to get more from less in different ways. So it's not, we have to kind of go a receiver here. Like on the Aaron Donald point, I would be incredibly surprised. Like, they're never going to say, hey, we're going to replace Aaron Donald with this player. Like, it's a nonsense idea to do that. Of course, it's going to, I don't think you replace it, right? You don't need to think about it like that. Just think about how you are structuring your defense. Like, don't put the pressure on anyone. Like Kobe Turner had a strong rookie year. I think you're going to see him used in a variety of different ways. But now maybe I am buying into the Sean McVay is just going offense narrative. And like, I love this as a Brock Bowers landing spot, but now it feels like 19 is kind of like almost too late, where people are saying, that 10 to 15 range is kind of like knocked down for Bowers. But I don't know, give me like an irresponsible trade up. Don't worry about getting a quarterback to replace Stafford. The Rams were like how close to getting into the NFC Championship game. Like, yeah, let's build the ultimate shootout team. And I love the excitement that you had in your voice the first time hearing you say Puka Nacua in like however a few months. I could really feel the excitement from you there.
I mean, wouldn't it just be so cool to see Puka Nacua and like Roma Dunze on the same offense, just like catching passes from Stafford? Like, I know trade up wise, like they would lose the trade on the trade charts, but like the football fan in me really just wants to see that.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter. I think you had posted something about Roma Dunze, and then they had mentioned like, oh, like it'd be a perfect Ram. Like, yeah, it would be an awesome Ram. What, like, how much are you gonna have to trade up to get him?
Yeah,
I'm
be a lot.
concerned if there exists a world where Roma Dunze is falling to 19. I don't know. Maybe I get the Roma Dunze like tattoo like Jim Harbaugh has. I would love the Rams. Yeah, I'm glad. Tej, this feels like how much we've gone through in terms of like the draft guide and having to prep all the stuff for the draft show. This is the like, how do we have fun at the draft, especially when we're there, and just receiver to everyone, Roma Dunze to the Rams. Everyone trades up. No one wins on the trade charts. It's just everyone constantly losing on the trade charts. But as long as the vibes are good. Tej, we got 3 questions left. What number are you giving me next?
Yeah, let's go up to number 1 here.
All right. Now, before I will say, when I was starting to put these questions together, I didn't initially think, all right, we're just going to steal Shield's idea for how he kind of does the framing. So this was the question I wanted to lead off with, because every year it feels like we talk ourselves into there being more quarterbacks going in the first round that teams like actually have interest in. Every year it feels like we boost quarterbacks up, since it is, of course, such a big year. This year, I think people feel generally safe saying that Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and JJ McCarthy will go in the first round, if not in like the top third of round 1. And right, Tej, I think the over-under is at 4.5 for quarterbacks taken in the first round. Got 2 on the edge there in terms of Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix. So how do we approach the question of how many quarterbacks will go in round 1?
Yeah, so I'm going to post a graph about this on Twitter when this episode comes out, so that you can probably see what I'm saying more clearly here. But using grinding the mocks data from Benjamin Robinson and comparing it to actual draft position, we can see that after the top 10, top 15 picks of a draft, no one really knows where quarterbacks are going to go. It becomes a very high variance thing, and it makes a lot of intuitive sense. Like, quarterbacks get clicks. Quarterbacks tend to get over mocked, especially after the top 10, top 15 picks. There's so many examples. There was even a point where Malik Willis was being knocked at number 2 overall. One year he ends up going in the 3rd round. The 3rd round. You have had like so many different examples of this throughout the year. Desmond Ridder was someone who was overmocked. Drew Lock, Will Levis was the most recent example. And so I went year by year to kind of see how this played out. So 2019, you have Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, and Dwayne Haskins all go in the first round. Drew Lock falls to number 42 overall. 2021, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance all go top 3. Fields and Jones fall out of the top 10 despite being heavily mocked inside the top 10. Malik Willis was mocked basically exclusively in the first round in 2022, fell to 86th overall. And then last year, we remember the Will Levis pictures from draft night. He was sitting in the room with his family. He was mocked in the top 10 consistently, fell to number 33 overall. I'll never get over the 2018 draft. I still remember vividly, like, I skipped studying for a science test. I didn't end up doing that well on that Friday because I just wanted to see where Lamar Jackson was going to go. And I felt bad for him while he was sitting in the room as he fell. So I was like, I think these quarterbacks are going to fall a lot more than they were mocked. And so that's why I have the under 4.5 in this draft.
Tej, looks like it was a good decision. You looking at draft stuff instead of your science test stuff. Look where we're going to be this weekend. We're not going to be at a science fair. We're going to be at the NFL draft. So that's a big one. All right, like the quarterbacks that clicked is true, and as essentially members of the like football Twitter sphere, I understand. We're part of that kind of complex. Like this one, it feels like whatever. Like 2 months ago, we weren't at like JJ McCarthy is going to get picked 4th overall island. Like, and now that's like that feels like the ground truth. And I haven't accepted that yet, where it's like, well, how do we continue to move these people up? And like, of course, I think it's important to know, yes, of course, the buildings, the NFL buildings, they're going to have players graded a little bit differently than the public is. They have like important amounts of more information, or more amounts, larger amounts of important information, like medicals, like it's the personal, like how you did at the Top Golf team meeting there, Tage. Maybe we have one between me, you, Ben, and Sam. See how everyone does. But like one of these 4 guys is gonna fall. Caleb is not gonna fall. I think that like we don't need to talk about that. Between May, Daniel, and McCarthy, like one of them has to fall out of the top 10. I feel like, okay, the Commanders are going to take one at 2, so you got 2 of them left. And there's like, okay, well, is it Jane Daniels falls to the Raiders, where he has a connection to Antonio Pierce? Like, just hopefully someone fall to Minnesota if Minnesota can't find a way to trade up. Does Minnesota want to trade up for McCarthy and really give up a lot to kind of get in that spot? But Tage, I mean, the thought of like is a team going to reach, like seeing Bo Nix mock to the Broncos just because the Broncos need a quarterback, though, as we know, they did trade for one, I suppose, in Zach Wilson this weekend. Like Bo Nix can't be a first round pick. I don't think, like, based on kind of I guess like everything we see, like, is someone going to buy into like, hey, your jump from Auburn, Oregon, like your accuracy numbers where like your time to throw is relatively low, if I remember correctly, and like a lot of those are kind of those shorter passes, screens, and things like that. I don't know, Tish. I think I'm over the quarterbacks. As you know, I'm all in on the receivers here. Give me Drake May to someone fancy, and let's just kind of continue about our day. But it'll be fun to see. Like, at the same time, I think, okay, well, we can't let someone reach. Someone's going to, right? It just takes one. It literally just takes one team to do it. So I don't know if we see someone trade up to get in front or get the Chiefs like out of 32 and get Michael Penix Jr. Maybe, that's how you get over 4.5. Tish, 2 questions left. Where are we going next?
So let's go to number 7 here as their second to last question.
All right. So the Bills and Chiefs, they have real needs at receiver, and this receiver class is positioned as a very strong one. Even if maybe I don't like love that tier 2 of the class, where I think people are saying there's still a ton of depth there. The Bills are at 28, Chiefs are at 32. Both are decent trade-up candidates. I think one player mocked to both of them has been Xavier Worthy, who is a 40-yard dash king, plays fast, can run through the ceiling that you try and put over an offense. Haddon has, I think, some real concerns as well. Do you think that the Bills or Chiefs, or would you be willing to take a shot on Xavier Worthy in the first round?
Yeah, so you mentioned the trade up candidate side of things here. If I'm the Bills and Chiefs, I would be looking to trade down a little bit because I think that the double dip on receiver could be really helpful for both of these teams, where it's not like they're missing maybe a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 they can plug in and kind of like be fine on offense. Like, I think they want more sustainable production from their receivers over time. And so like trading back and taking both Keon Coleman and Jalen Polk or some combination of that, I think could be helpful for them. But I think I would be okay if they took Xavier Worthy in the first round. I know that Worthy's weight is a concern to a lot of people, but I really think that because, and I'm really curious to hear what you say of this, because of maybe some changes in scheme or how defense is being played, like weight seems to be mattering less for receivers. It has the lowest correlation of anything measured at the combine to receiver production, but also Tank Dell 165, Devontae Smith 165, Hollywood Brown 170, Zay Flowers 172. Like, I think that there are so many options of receivers coming in now, being under 180 pounds and having success in the NFL. But like, yeah, I'm just wondering, like, where do you think that's kind of come from with respect to whether it's scheme, rules, or a combination of the both?
Well, Tej, I mean, me and you being guys that are under 180, it's always a proud moment for us to have the lanky guys that are able to succeed in the league. I do think that like you can manufacture receivers, or you can like have them avoid getting pressed now in a way that maybe offenses didn't use as much in the past. So just like get your receiver into a stack, like that really as hard as it is, or even then, like teams can try and have the point defender kind of press the back guy, but you're able to get those free releases in a lot of different ways. People I think are on the offensive end are much smarter on getting those good receivers into the slot in ways that are able to avoid some of that. And now, obviously, like football is like an injury guaranteed sport, so it's still going to be extremely physical, and there's still going to be points where hey, you're gonna get jammed even down the field, even if it's whatever you say against the rules. Give the defense some credit there. So there's just so many ways you get those guys in motion, or like obviously the way the Dolphins do it, where you guys get guys with running starts where no one is gonna press that guy. Like it just feels like maybe it's not that hey, there's more ways to do it. It is just more accepted. Like you're seeing more teams do it where I mean Justin Jefferson has awesome releases, but you're gonna find him in the slot. You're gonna find him as the back receiver in kind of in stacks a bunch. So it does feel like I'm happy that in more recent years we've seen more examples like Devontae Smith, obviously a good one, Tank Dell more recently. Like these types of receivers are able to succeed, and we don't live in an environment where it's like, hey, if you're under a certain weight at the receiver position, like you just can't play. Obviously, like health concerns and whatever the correlation between weight and injury, we'll let someone else kind of draw those. So it does feel like now your like thoughts on Worthy as a player himself, like that is a little bit separate from hey, like is the weight a concern? Like yeah, I mean I guess it is at least a little bit of a concern, but it shouldn't be the same level of concern that we were used to seeing. Maybe you would have seen on that 2018 broadcast when you were studying for your science test, Tage. Maybe your math test here. Do you remember what the last number that we have is?
I think it's number 5.
Oh, it is 5. Yeah, I saw your little cursor there. Going. All right, let's finish up on this one. I'm glad that we finish up on the team that has the first pick. Obviously, the Bears kick off the draft to what we assume is Caleb Williams. Tish, did you see Caleb Williams like tweeted something out today where he was like, "Oh, Rome Odunze was on my flight. I'm a big fan. Love that. Love that."
Yeah, I think someone might tweet that about you when you're on your flight to Detroit tomorrow.
Tish, no, I was gonna say I might tweet that about you, but well, obviously you're gonna be on different flight. Well, you're not gonna have to fly. You're already over there. But okay, so the Bears, they only have 4 picks in the entire draft, which would be an extremely small rookie class, particularly tied to Williams' rookie contract. So trading back maybe makes sense. They could really use an edge rusher. But thinking about Caleb and one of those tier 1 receivers, particularly if it's Rome Odunze, like, or if like maybe all those guys between Harris, Neighbors, and Odunze are gone at 9. But think about one of them with DJ Moore. That would be really, really fun. As you know, this has been the fun podcast. So are the Bears better off at 9, trading up or trading back?
Yeah, so you joked about how I was mentioning that like a lot of these teams should actually take receivers. I think this is an exception to that because, like you mentioned, like 4 picks is a really small rookie class. The Bears have made a lot of trades to get kind of the supporting cast in place. Between the Montez Sweat one to really help the defense, the Keenan Allen one to really help the offense. And like, I think that when you look at the Bears, like you do need an injection of young talent eventually if you kind of want to sustain that with Caleb Williams, even though he's going to be on his rookie contract. So trading back, picking up some extra picks, maybe even a future pick, I think would be really beneficial for them. Just having at least like 5 or 6 draft picks that you end up picking in this class. You pick an edge, you pick an offensive lineman, you can take a receiver maybe later, day 2. Like, I think that would be probably the ideal strategy for them. If Rome Odunze does get past, let's say, pick 7, like if the Titans stay there and want to take their offensive lineman and Rome Odunze becomes available at 8 or 9, at 8, I wouldn't fault the Bears for trading a future 4th or something along those lines, like the Eagles did last year to swap picks with actually the Bears themselves, where you trade up, you get Rome Odunze, you give Caleb Williams one of the best wide receiver trios in the NFL, because Rome Odunze will become the most coveted player in the draft once both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors are off the board. So maybe you kind of want to make sure you secure that pick. Like, I don't think that'll be an egregious decision or anything. I like just trading back for them just because of how little picks they have right now.
Yeah, Tish, I get all that. I really do. The 4 picks, that is such a small rookie class, and obviously one of those is going to be a quarterback there. But if Odunze is sitting there at 9, obviously, but yeah, like you said, even at 8, that would be pretty hard, I think, to pass up, because like we said, right, like the decade of your franchise is decided by this quarterback. Like, it's always going to be tied to it. If he flames out, people are going to be talking about it in 2034 for sure. Like, they're still going to be thinking about it then. So, is Odunze I'm laughing because who cares what the other picks are, Tage? Look, let's do the press conference for polls on day 2 and day 3 with just like the who is going to stop this offense graphic with like Roma Dunze and like a cool visor and like all this. Caleb Williams looking great in a Bears uniform too. So that one's going to be, and I like that you mentioned that Dunze. I feel like he's going to be like so coveted after our assumption is that Harrison and Neighbors go pretty quick. And there are a lot of teams that need receivers and a lot of teams that it sounds like both of us would like if they added another receiver. Maybe there's a surprise team that trades up. Maybe Dunze falls. And like if it's the run and offensive linemen happens a little bit earlier, maybe the Falcons take him and we just go, all right, well, like cool, Atlanta, you're gonna go ahead and draft another one there. We didn't talk about the Falcons at all. I think they're like just constantly mock Dallas Turner. Makes sense. But maybe they're like in a spot where it feels like, hey, we can trade back because someone wants to come up and get a Dunze before the Bears are gonna potentially swipe him. So, and I like this one because we'll find out about this one relatively early on Thursday. We don't have to wait all the way until whatever it is, like us twiddling our thumbs at 11 o'clock, not studying for any science tests in the media room, thinking about what like who's gonna trade up to kind of bump the Chiefs out. Do you have like a team that you think is like this is just like the one team that like is maybe like the most the most fun for the draft day, or like you're just really monitoring particularly like this one team I want to see like what is going to happen with their draft capital?
Yeah, well, I think the obvious choice is the Vikings. Probably the most interesting thing, but like the Cardinals, I'm also really interested by because I just can't wait for that Monty Ossenfort video of him working the phones to come out again for this year's draft because that was such good content. And I need to see his trade down and trade back up again, to happen again.
Yeah, Howard Roseman, outdo him. Come on, trade. Let's trade back from your first pick and then trade back up a little bit. Get your defensive player. We got to get. I mean, the Eagles, they do a good job with their social media stuff. But, the Vikings actually do a really good job too. So I think that could be Kwesi Star turn. Let's get the cameras rolling. Look at draft day part 2. Who are they going to land? We will find out. Do you want to just one more time state just how excited you are for the draft? Because I wanted to make sure that I did, because it's like never lost on me that like how cool it is that that we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean we are very lucky to being able to go to the draft. Appreciate Eric Eager, Matt Stopsky for setting this up for us. I'm very pumped for it. It'll be really cool to broadcast from Detroit as well when we do our recap show on Thursday night. I know you have some really cool stuff going on Friday, and then we'll also have our day 2 preview Friday before the draft as well. So I'm pumped for that.
Yeah, just a ton of draft content is going to come from the Sumer Sports Twitter account, Sumer Sports on YouTube, where the live draft show will be on Thursday starting at 7:30 Eastern, as well as just a bunch of coverage from Detroit. Going to have some interviews with a bunch of people from the media on Friday talking about different teams and what they did in the first round. But most importantly, Tage, I mean, coverage from your 2 favorite podcasters, Tage and I. Just shout out to the Statskys out there. So thank you everyone for spending some time with us today. And we hope you'll spend some more time with us the rest of this week before the draft. So enjoy the rest of your week and we will see you next time.